I'm looking for fresh drinking water, and this is not a divining rod. I'm not dowsing, but I am going to use some of the methods employed by the San people of southern Africa, and they've successfully been storing water in ostrich eggs and collecting it through sip wells and other methods for centuries. It's so ironic how you can be so close to a body of water and still not be able to drink it. And that goes for our inland sources as well. Not every river or dam has drinkable water in it, and sometimes it can be tricky to tell which ones are drinkable. So if you don't have a filtration system or the opportunity to boil water to make it drinkable, you'll have to employ some other means and methods to get water. We also underestimate how the salt water from the ocean presses inland and makes our freshwater systems brackish, because the salt water mixes with the fresh water, and what we end up having is a combination of the two, and that's what's referred to as brackish water. The San have employed the method of digging sip wells for centuries, and what they do is they use a stick like this, a digging stick, to dig a hole in the ground, and that hole fills up with water that is drinkable. Now, I can't do that here. I'll have to move a little bit more inland, because if I start digging here, what I'm going to get is predominantly, first of all, ocean water, and because it's so sandy in this area, I'm just going to have my digging hole or my well collapsing on itself the whole time. So we're going to move a little bit more inland for that, and we'll move higher up as well and look at some other water sources that you can source drinkable water from. The first method that I can use to collect water is just by mopping it up from the ground where the dew has settled on the grasses and on the surrounding leaves and plants. And I find that you can quite reliably pick up dew from grasses because they're quite low down. So all of the moisture and the dew that drips down from other plants is collected by the grass, and it gets stuck on those fine little hairs on the grass leaves, and it's really easy to mop it up from there. And I can use a buff, or I can use a handkerchief. If you have a t-shirt with you that you're not wearing, that you don't need, you can tie it around your legs and just walk through the grasses. You'll pick up some water from that as well. I do, however, find that it is better to collect it deliberately by wiping or mopping the grasses. You pick up more moisture that way. And what I've got with me is my buff as usual. And I'm just going to use this buff in order to pick up some of the moisture. When removing water from the grasses, you actually want to do it quite carefully so that you don't lose any droplets. So don't shake the grasses and don't shake the foliage. Just gently dab and collect. And you can see from my clothing that there is some water in the ground here, all the while just being careful of snakes. Our snakes around here are very lazy, and they won't move out of the way for me, so they'll just lie there and wait for me to pass and then have a nice bite of my leg. You can see there. It's not perfectly clear water. It's got some of the dust and the dirt on it from the grass. That should be okay. I'm slowly moving inland, and what I'm starting to see is a lot of animal prints. And like here, this is an antelope print. You see the little toes there, and if we look carefully, we'll see another one over here, another antelope print. And there are some tiny little other footprints around, like that one over there. And that just tells me that we should find water around here somewhere, because the animals will drink from the water. But we don't want to share our water with animals because they carry bacteria and pathogens in their mouth that can be quite harmful to humans and can make us really ill. So we want to find our own source of water. A couple of tips and tricks for finding water sources. Think about where the water would naturally accumulate and how it would naturally flow and run. So if there's a draw in a valley or a saddle between two mountain peaks, the water is going to accumulate in that saddle, and you're more likely to find water in those places. Another thing that you can have a look out for is animals, because the animals will be drawn to any water sources around, and bees, for example, never really nest outside of 5 kilometers of a water source. The San people of southern Africa have been using ostrich eggs, and they've plugged them, and they've been doing it for centuries, and they store them underground filled with water, and then they know where they can find water in future, especially in the dry season. The other implement that I've got today is a digging stick. And it's just a branch that I've got that I've sharpened off a little bit using my hatchet, and that helps me to dig. And if I need to dig a sip well, I'm going to definitely not try to use my hands all the time. So I've come a bit higher up onto the landscape now, and you can see there's a lot of water seeping down behind me, and that water is perfectly safe to drink because it gets filtered through all of the rocks and the soil as it runs down, and there's no pollutants at the top of the hill or at the top of the mountain. There's no settlements or human activity that could pollute this water, so it's perfectly safe to drink. When searching for water, a great place to start is on the side of a mountain or a rocky outcrop where the sun doesn't actually reach that area or that landscape that you're in. So it doesn't evaporate the water sources from that area. And this rock face actually faces in a southerly direction. So the sun goes east to west, and it doesn't actually reach this side here because I'm in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, you'll look on the northern side of rocky outcrops or slopes or of the mountains, and you'll quite reliably find either damp patches of ground where you can dig a sip well, or you'll find water seeping down the mountainside or the rocks, or collected in little bowls in the rocks, and that will give you a little bit of water. If you find yourself in a situation where you're desperate for water and it's getting really hot, or it's the middle of the day, your best thing to do is actually to just sit and wait until it's cooler before going to find water, and to think a bit about where you will most likely find water, because you're going to expend energy searching for that water. And if you're already dehydrated, the last thing that you need to do is to go around in the sunshine and tire yourself out and lose even more of your body fluids trying to find water. To make this a passive endeavor, I'm going to put my container where it will stand. Now I can either use this little leather thong if I can tie it to something, and that will drip water into the container. So if you can tie it somewhere or stick it in somewhere, you'll see that water starts running down it. The other method that we can use is by just putting some reeds together that I collected earlier. Actually capture the water from here where it drips off of. That is the inside of the ostrich egg. Relatively dirty water, but it's perfectly drinkable. Right, so there are these depressions around where you can see that water has been before and it's seeped into the ground. And just behind here, it looks like there used to be a little stream running all the way along. And it seems like this is the spring, or the part where the stream starts, and it runs all the way along here. But at the moment it's dry and there's nothing in it. But if I dig down, I'm pretty sure that I'll reach the water table quite quickly, and hopefully I can dig a little sip well for myself. The drier your soil is, and the longer the time has been since the last rain, the deeper you're going to have to dig. And if you don't find water right away, don't worry, it will probably seep into your hole if you wait a little while. I've dug my initial well, and this is another good spot that I think I'll probably be able to find water, and while I wait for that one, for the water to seep into it, I'm going to start digging here too. Digging stick. Oh, there we go, water. There's already some water coming out there. Much better success on this side. Well, we found water. Look at that. It just seeps in there. My muddy digging stick now. However dirty, it's actually safe to drink. Okay, we'll let that seep in for a bit. It just smells like swill. You can see there's quite a bit of water draining into this hole, and it's only about half as deep as the other hole, and that should tell you just how important it is to choose your location wisely. So I've had much more success with this well than I have with the other one, and the only disadvantage is this is really muddy looking. But then what the sand people would do is they would have a little grass plug like that and some reeds or grasses that they put together like that, and then they plug the straw with their grasses, nice and dirty. And now this they can use to suck up the water and then drop it into their ostrich egg or into their container, and that gives them drinking water. And even though this is really muddy, it is actually safe to drink. Groundwater is much safer to drink than is surface water. So because this is seeping up from the ground, we're perfectly safe to drink this. And that is actually much clearer than what it is in the hole. So my sip well is really muddy, and this filter, this little grass filter, is actually working very well. I'll show that to you. And that is pretty well filtered actually. You can see there's still a little bit of dirt in there, but that's not the end of the world. So I've accumulated quite a bit of water in here, and I can easily plug this up and keep it for another time. It'll keep underground. I can bury it anywhere that I see fit. And that concludes today's video on finding water. Remember to subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Love to hear from you guys. Until the next time, live green.